Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro represents Connecticut's 3rd District. She serves in the Democratic leadership as the co-chair of the Policy and Steering Committee and is the ranking member on the Labor, Health and Human Services, and Education Appropriation Subcommittee, which oversees our country's investments in health, education, and employment. She also serves on the subcommittee, which oversees food and drug safety. Representative DeLauro believes that our first priority must be to strengthen our economy and create good middle-class jobs. She has been a leader in the fight against TPP, and she is determined to increase support for education, to fully implement healthcare reform, to protect the rights of employees and unions, and to raise wages to a true, livable standard. She has led the fight in Congress to achieve full pay equity for women, as well as ensuring that all employees have access to paid sick time. Our values are her values. Please join me in welcoming to New Hampshire, Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro.
Thank you so much. I really am so honored to be here today with all of you. All right, Connecticut. Where's Connecticut here? So I see some of my comments. This is it really is it's great. You know, I was listening back there to the stories, the real stories. They're poignant, but there's a reality to what people's lives are about today, and that's what we need to understand. And your last speaker and her last line talked about having the political will to get it done, to make a difference in people's lives. And I'm just saying to all of you, and you know this about your strength and about your power, is that you do have that strength, you do have that power to make sure that those of us who serve in public life have that political will, or we will no longer serve in public life if we do not represent your interests. So I could not be more honored to be here with all of you today. The great work that you all do. Besides New Hampshire, AFL-CIO, I understand that Massachusetts is in the house as well, and I know that there are some Connecticut folks here. So again, I thank you very, very much. I wanted to say I see Carol Shea Porter. How are you, my dear? I just was asking after you. We're there for you. I feel like I'm at home here. This is family. I really do. And I'll explain that in a moment. I know the governor is not here, but I just wanted to acknowledge your governor, because she is such a determined advocate for working families in this state. Her time in the legislature, serving as your governor, she has fought for collective bargaining rights, for good wages, for jobs that pay good wages, and for benefits, stronger workmen's compensation. And I am, as the author of the Paycheck Fairness Bill in the House of Representatives, I just want to say thank you to all of you, to the Speaker of the House and to the Governor and the others who passed that legislation so that we can look at pay equity for women. And I thank you very, very much. She will make one hell of a United States Senator. That's all I can say. It's going to be great. It's going to be well. I also have to recognize someone who has been such a tireless defender of working families, and that's Rich Trumka. He has, yes, he's been a champion for America's working people for his entire life. He hails, as you know, from small coal mining communities of southwest Pennsylvania. He worked in those mines like his father and his father before him. And that commitment to good, honest, hard work, as well as his steadfast solidarity with the working people of his community, really has infused Rich's leadership as a president of the AFL-CIO. And his advocacy, which is so important to me, starts at the kitchen table. and it spans the world. He envisions an economy that works for all working families. An economy of rising wages, of equal pay, of respect at work, safe jobs, the freedom to be able to form or join a union and to bargain collectively. And he knows what it takes to get there. He never backs off, and you could not have a better leader than Rich Trumka. And I'm proud to be his friend. Proud to be his. You know, I said a moment ago that I feel as if I'm with family. Most of you do not know who I am or what I'm about, except that I am from Connecticut and I represent the 3rd District, the 3rd Congressional District. But being here, for me, is really an affirmation of who I am and where I come from. I'm the daughter of an immigrant family. My father was born in Italy. They could only dare to dream that their daughter would serve in the United States House of Representatives. Working class, blue collar. My dad was an insurance salesman. My mom, a garment worker. She worked in the old sweatshops in the city of New Haven, Connecticut. And she would have me go there to meet her after school. And there was method to her madness. She wanted me to see what was there. And I saw a dirty place, a noisy place, with mostly women with their backs hunched over a sewing machine, pumping out the dresses as fast as they could because it was piecework. And if you didn't produce, you didn't get paid. And as you may know, in the needle industry, you can get that needle in your finger in those trades as that power machine is going. You don't stop to go get a tetanus shot. You don't go to a clinic. You wrap your hand and you keep going because God helped you get a drop of blood on that garment. You don't get paid for it. And her view was, for me, get an education so you don't have to do this. So when I am asked, and I'm often asked, as those of us who serve in public life are asked, what motivates you? What motivates you to do what you do? I'll tell you what motivates me. Not 25 years in the House of Representatives, but being born and raised in an Italian, Catholic, working class, blue-collar family. And the struggle of my folks to make sure that their daughter could realize the American dream. So that every single day, I work to ensure that their struggle was not in vain. That's what motivates me. That's what motivates all of you in the work that you do. And without the labor movement, without organized labor, we would not have weekends or minimum wage. Our factories would be death traps. Our children would be working in them. There would be no Social Security, no unemployment insurance, no family and medical leave. And in fact, without unions, there would be no middle class. It's your work, your determination is simply indispensable to the American way of life. Our nation's unions... Unions are more important now than ever. It used to be that if you worked hard, you could dream big. You could get a good paying job, buy a home, put your kids through school. That was the American dream. That was the way into the middle class. And it was organized labor and labor unions that forged that great American middle class. But that dream today is fading away. It is like sand sifting through our fingers. And today, the biggest challenge, the biggest economic challenge facing American families is that they are in jobs that just simply do not pay them enough to live on. And there's so much talk these days about income inequality. And you can't talk about income inequality without your starting point being stagnant wages. Wages have been stagnant in decline for 40 years. Families are struggling today. They struggle to put food on the table, to pay their bills. They can't think about putting their kids through school to go to college. They can't afford it. They can't take a vacation. And they don't even think about retirement security. And all of this is the result of misguided Republican trickle-down policies that never do, in fact, trickle down. They benefit the wealthiest few rather than the backbone of this great nation, the middle class. To restore the fundamental promise of upward mobility that has always been the cornerstone of the American story, we have to restore the balance between corporations and labor. We have to level the playing field. What does it mean? That means standing up for working people, standing up for their basic rights in the workplace. And that is why you and I have been fighting tooth and nail against all of the Republican attempts to hamstring labor. Now, I don't believe in this popular view that wage stagnation in the United States today is the inevitable result of globalization and technology. That's not the case. It is the product of conscious effort by special interests that drive public policy only to their own advantage. Yes. Bad public policies are choice. Policies like right to work, a flatline minimum wage, and bad trade deals. As our Nobel-winning economist, and you have the piece of paper on the table here, Joe Stiglitz has written, and I quote, "Inequality is not inevitable. It is a choice we make. And we need to stop making bad choices. We need to rewrite the rules. And it is and I say it is members of Congress's job to rewrite the rules. And it is high time that paycheck fairness, paid sick days, paid family and medical leave, and fair schedules become a reality for all Americans, not a lottery based on where you happen to work. And that's why I really am the proud author and working with so many others on the Healthy Families Act. Allow workers access to job-protected paid sick days. The Family Act, which would ensure that working people have paid family leave. Schedules that work to provide relief to those who face irregular schedules. It is why I support raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. We speak about long-term policies, education reform, and infrastructure. I'm there. Infrastructure bank, the whole 9 yards. But one of the things that I've been talking about, these are short-term policies that we can enact right now if we had the political will to enact them, and they could bring relief. They could lower the anxiety level of people today and what they're facing. This also means, my friends, that we need to have a trade policy that works for working Americans. And over the past 25 years, our country has signed trade deal after trade deal. Each time we have been promised more domestic jobs, increased wages. But the reality has been very different. Foreign goods flood in, American jobs flow out. And the wages of working men and women have remained flat. Now the administration wants to continue these same failed policies with the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, the TPP. Yes, that's a good comment. The agreement has been negotiated in secret with undemocratic countries and will cost Americans their jobs and will reduce wages. 1 month after the deal was announced in Atlanta, the administration finally released the text to members of Congress, and to the public at 3 a.m. last Thursday. If you include all of the annexes and all of the side letters, the document is well over 5,000 pages. They took 7 years to craft it. We have been unable to read it. And now we have 90 days to make a decision. And it's yes or no. We cannot ask you. I'm there. We cannot amend it. Just a quick note about that. We cannot amend it because of a vote last June. We won the vote last June. The administration knows it. But it was a lot of parliamentary chicanery back and forth. And in the long run, the administration did get fast-track authority, which means we cannot amend it. But let me just say this, and they do know we won. It was the slimmest of majorities. Under the law, there is still time for Congress to reject the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. And we need to tell the Congress, and we need to tell the administration, that we are here to fight, and we are not going away. There has been the hallmark of this agreement from the beginning. It was classified like a state secret. And unlike in previous negotiations, members of Congress were not allowed to be part of the process. And yet we do have the constitutional authority to approve trade agreements. American families were locked out, but corporate special interests had a place at the table. And now that we've had a chance to start to review the document, it's little wonder that the administration hid it for so long, because it is worse than we thought. TPP lowers U.S. tariffs to 0. It gives foreign competitors unfettered access to U.S. markets, while other countries are allowed dramatically longer periods of time to open their markets. Prior agreements that the TPP is based on tell a very grim tale. The last big trade agreement with South Korea cost this country 75,000 jobs in the first 3 years alone. TPP is much larger, as you know. It forces Americans into competition with labor in countries like Vietnam, where labor unions are functionally non-existent and the minimum wage is 65 cents an hour. Wall Street Journal, no left-leaning publication, projected a $56 billion increase in our manufacturing and automotive trade deficit under the TPP by 2025. Trade deficits not only bring down our nation's economic output, they are directly associated with the loss of jobs and the decrease in suppression of wages. Vietnam is slated to be one of the biggest beneficiaries under the agreement through an enormous increase in manufacturing and agricultural products. The potential job loss is not limited to manufacturing. Malaysia has a large English-speaking population and would be a primary target for high-tech and call center job exports. And like previous trade agreements, the TPP does nothing to curb currency manipulation, which allows countries to keep the price of their goods artificially low, which puts our products at a disadvantage. And this abuse has contributed to the loss of up to 5 million U.S. jobs. In New Hampshire, Massachusetts, currency manipulation by Japan and China is directly associated with the combined loss of 145,000 jobs in 2014. And that's according to the Economic Policy Institute. I didn't make up that number. There is a separate, by the way, joint declaration on currency manipulation. Not part of the agreement, but it's a separate declaration. It's issued by the Treasury Department. This is the language. It says that countries should, quote, avoid currency manipulation. That they should, quote, refrain from competitive devaluation. Avoid? Refrain? What are we talking about here? Where's the toughness in the language that says, no, you can't do it? So this declaration has no teeth, and it is just window dressing. And no one should be fooled by it. We have seen what happens when you don't enforce currency manipulation rules. Just to go back slightly, NAFTA, we all remember NAFTA. All of the agreements that were made there, when we entered that agreement, when Mexico devalued the peso, it wiped out all of the export benefits to the United States under the agreement's terms. Result? Record explosion in U.S.-Mexico trade deficit, loss of thousands of American manufacturing jobs across our southern border. And the United States has not experienced a trade surplus with Mexico in the 2 decades since. The administration has discussed the idea of enlarging the TPP by adding China. China is the worst currency abuser in history. In the past few months, China manipulated its currency at a cost of 640,000 U.S. jobs. Administration took no action. 2 weeks later, Vietnam, part of the TPP, devalued its currency. With this agreement, my friends, keep this in mind, this agreement rewards will go to the cheaters. Keep that square in your mind as this is being debated. Rules of origin, another big piece of a trade agreement. It defines the extent to which products can contain parts from outside of the free trade zone and still be entitled to the preferential treatment that we give them. Under NAFTA, 62.5% of the product had to come from the 3 members' countries to be able to benefit from the agreement. TPP lowers that standard to 45%. Think about China again. China is not party to the agreement, but it is the biggest exporter in Asia. The worry is that China, by manipulating the rules, can use the TPP to grow exports even further. What do the rules mean? That 55% of a car could come from China, still qualify for the tariff benefits under TPP. You know what this does? Because this is about jobs, this conference, about wages. You know what the gains that we've made in the auto industry and with our suppliers, just as we're beginning to get back on our feet again, this will take us backwards in terms of jobs and suppressing wages. This agreement goes further than any by empowering 9,000 more foreign corporations to challenge U.S. laws. Similar provisions in the WTO agreements have already led to the repeal of part of our food labeling laws. It was mentioned when I was introduced. I spent a lot of time on the issue of food safety, and particularly in the product coming in to the United States, because we're not able to inspect the product coming in. Only about 1% of product do we inspect and coming in. If this passes, it will not be long before we see challenges to our food safety system. We struggle today with the system and holding back tons of tainted seafood from TPP countries like Malaysia and Vietnam. Don't buy shrimp that comes. I'm serious. Don't do it. For yourself or for your family. When it comes to food safety problems, there was an analysis by Food and Water Watch that indicates that the TPP has prioritized trade over food safety. It is going to allow challenges to the U.S. border inspection system. There's new language that's unique to this agreement. None others in the past have had it. That's going to allow exporters to challenge our ability to detain unsafe food at the border. We face a deluge of unsafe seafood from TPP countries. A recent survey of catfish farms in Vietnam found that U.S. banned antibiotics. They found that catfish in Vietnam, there was 100% of those farms studied had a product that had those banned antibiotics or pesticides. Fish in these farms swim in a slurry of dirty water, unhealthy chemicals, and in their own filth. I told you we can only inspect 1%. And even with that, we turn away thousands of pounds of seafood every year because of dirt, decomposition, banned drugs, illegal additives, and salmonella. On vital issues like workers' rights, the environment, and human rights, the trade agreement standards are only valuable, as you know, and you know, Rich, that if they are enforceable. If they are enforceable. In 2007, my Democratic colleagues in the House of Representatives forced the Bush administration to renegotiate a number of trade agreements to include enhanced labor standards. In the 8 years since, neither the current administration nor its predecessor has taken meaningful action to enforce those provisions. And so dozens of Colombian union organizers are being murdered, 18 to date this year, despite labor provisions in the U.S.-Colombia Free Trade Agreement. Thousands of acres of Peruvian forests are being destroyed, despite environmental provisions in the U.S.-Peru FTA. Not once has the administration self-initiated a case against either country for violating the terms of the agreement. Why? Why would we assume that the TPP will be any different when it comes to Brunei's persecution of LGBT men and women, Malaysia's human trafficking record, and Vietnam's abundant use of child labor? The administration will claim that it consulted with labor while shaping the agreement, but all of the improvements that were requested by labor organizations and by progressive members of the Congress have been ignored. There are poorly defined core labor standards. There is no requirement to prevent countries from lowering their labor standards to attract business investment inside and outside of the special investment zones. There is no requirement for ensuring effective labor inspections. There is nothing to ensure that migrant workers will receive the same rights and remedies as a country's national workers, which would prevent abuse and that race to the bottom that we are all fearful of. Instead, again, listen to the language. TPP includes weak language, quote, let's discourage trade in goods made with forced labor instead of prohibiting forced labor in goods that we are engaged in. Where are our values? It includes minimum wage language, sets no standard. Brunei could implement a minimum wage of 1 cent per hour, and they are in full compliance. Vietnam is so far from being able to comply with all of the labor standards in this agreement, but the administration is not insisting that they comply with the agreement on day one. They get a 5-year pass before they have to take any action to meet basic labor standards. And according to Human Rights Watch, Malaysia has done nothing to enforce sex trafficking or forced labor laws this past year. And yet, talking about our values, the administration's rush to close on an agreement outweighed the State Department's responsibility to impartially report on human rights atrocities when they upgraded Malaysia's classification this year in their trafficking in persons report. Finally, we know that the TPP will give additional investor protections for multinational pharmaceutical corporations. It does not meet the standards for access to life-saving drugs that House Democrats fought to secure in 2007. This will inevitably result in increased foreign aid costs, decreased access to medicines for the most vulnerable populations, and increased costs to medicines in our country when people are struggling today and trying to be able, in a bad economy, And if you get sick, like one of our speakers talked about, how do you survive? How do you survive? And what is this about? It's about so that a handful of wealthy interests will get the ability to become wealthier at the expense of everyone else. Yeah, but you know, that's why, for all of these reasons surrounding this group, all of our Democratic presidential candidates, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, Martin O'Malley, they have expressed opposition to the agreement. Yes. And further, the Democratic base is united against the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, and you should know that 85% of our Democratic caucus never wavered for one moment in opposition to granting fast-track authority. That structure is still in place, and it's working hard. And with the AFL-CIO and the United Labor Movement leading the charge, for the first time in history, my friends, nearly every major progressive organization in this country has come together to form a united front against the agreement. We have rallied environmental groups, human rights groups, consumer protection advocates, faith groups, LGBT rights groups, healthcare advocates, and many more. And it is that unity of purpose, that will give us momentum to work for an economy that will benefit the middle class. We've got to change the course of our economy, where big money is winning and the middle class is dwindling. We need to turn that around. We need to ensure that our workers can earn a living wage where they can support their families, take time off when they are sick, or help a sick loved one. We must recognize that our families need quality, affordable child care, and the ability to save for the retirement, for their retirement, and for their kids' college education. That is the progressive agenda that we should be fighting for. That is the American dream. And millions of us, starting here, need to stand up, be united in saying, enough. Invest in our workers. Invest in our country. That is what made, and that is what will continue to keep this country great. Thank you for letting me be here.